In this episode, we're going to be looking about everything to do with tomatoes and what you can do to get some really fantastic crops, pests and disease, and all sorts of other things like pruning. So stay tuned. Well guys, it's really warm in here today. Now as you can see, I've got a few tomatoes already planted to my left here. They're about maybe 18 inches tall, 2 foot maybe, I don't know. But what I'm doing in some of them this year is I am planting in these, which are known as tomato halo rings. Now they have some spikes, and normally you just stick them in the ground like that and then you plant into them, you fill up the top. But what I've actually done is sunk them into the ground, because what this is going to allow me to do is to water within the circumference of the tomato halo. The tomato gets broken out. Now these sections are used for bamboo canes that come down into these points here and then support at the top for a support structure, but I don't need that because I've already got my canes in my ground here. Now, so these I am not needed, but I'm not going to get rid of them because I may use them somewhere else. You plant your tomato in the middle here, and what this allows then is that you can water out here and you can feed in that center. This does a couple of things for tomatoes, guys. Now with a tomato, you will notice, let me just take this label out, you will notice right up the stem there's a lot of fine hairs. Those hairs are actually new root nodes, and a tomato will root along the entire length of the plant. That's good for two reasons. The first, the more roots you have, the more water uptake, the more fruit that's produced. Secondly, the more roots you have, the better anchored the plant is and better able to support itself, and more nutrients it takes up. It's a win-win situation. So by planting it nice and deep in the hole down here where I've got some feed and things like that, it's going to allow me, I'm going to chuck some out here, it's going to allow me to plant it a little bit deeper. Now there's one drawback about sinking these, and that soil falls into this area here. Even though it's raised above the soil, as we are planting and things like that, soil can fall down here and block these little tiny holes that come out to the end of here. There is a way to combat that, and how you do that is get a drill bit and you can drill through. Now they say that it acts as a water reservoir, as you can see here, and that holds water and slowly releases that water. But I want to be able to send that water down a lot quicker, so I'm happy to take a drill bit and open them up a little bit. I'm not talking a lot, maybe twice as much. So we've sunk this down and I've got one big cane. Now this cane is supported right above me by a piece of 2x1 that runs along the rafters of the tunnel, and it then goes into a hole in there, and that just comes down here, and the tomato plant is actually planted within there. So the first thing we need to do is turn this tomato plant out, and as you can see, it's at the perfect time. We've got some roots coming out to the bottom, so it really needs to get in. In fact, I would have liked to get it in a little bit earlier, but we haven't broken any roots. As you can see, we've got a fantastic root system there, guys. Okay, so I'm just going to tease out some of these, try not to break them, just so that they go down rather than going round in circles. Now the idea of forcing these to go down, we're going to get a load of root mass around here, but also them roots are then going to come down into the ground below it. That's really, really good for us, because the water will feed those, or water those roots nice and deep. And the great thing about it is there's no evaporation, because we're not putting it on the top here. The second thing about that is that later on in the year, we're less likely to get blight. Now blight is devastating to tomatoes, and if you get water on the leaves and everything else, that can help create blight. Hot, humid conditions are perfect for blight, and in a polytunnel that's exactly what you get. However, keep the surface of your soil dry here, the less chance you're going to have. We've got good cross ventilation, as you can see from the green screens here. That blows right across the tunnel. There's 18 windows right down the length of the tunnel, so we've got plenty of ventilation in here. Now, planting this tomato, we don't need these bottom leaves, so we need to break them off. And this will just help us to plant this tomato, just like that, look. This will help us plant this tomato, and then all of these hairs along this stem here will also root. So we're going to put it down now as deep as we can. So we've probably got another 3 or 4 inches, probably that much out of it. So that'll be more roots. In the bucket here, all I've got is just a normal multi-purpose pot and compost, and I'm just going to top up this hole with that. Now, I haven't mentioned where I got these from, guys, and these came from Oakland Gardens, and they're fantastic price. They come in packs of 3 and they're great. Now, I've got 2, 4, 6, 8 to plant up here, tomatoes. I am going to plant more. I'm going to plant some just direct in the ground because I got 4 more of these, and I'm actually keeping these 4 for my cucumbers, and that'll be more on another episode about cucumbers because they got some different issues that we need to deal with. But back to the tomato. We just keep firming in this. There we are. This tomato is now planted. Nice. We can take out as much of the soil out of here as possible. And there we are. There we have it. So this tomato, there's a couple of things that we need to do with it. The first thing is we need to prune it. Now, I'm growing these tomatoes as cordons. That means there's going to be one stem right up the middle. All side shoots that come off the tomatoes, they take energy away from these plants. Now, yes, they will produce their own flowering stems and will produce fruit. The problem you have is then that this root system is trying to produce and keep alive all of that foliage. You're much better off running these tomatoes, and as you can see here, this is what's known as a truss. This is a little spur that has all tomato flowers that are going to appear on it, and that truss is number 1 truss. We will continue to grow this plant until 6 trusses, or approximately 6 feet, when it hits the 1x2 above us that supports it, at which point we will top the plant. But we must remove these side shoots to be able to grow as a cordon. Those side shoots will grow and they will take energy from the plant. So we do that, and they are in the axis of every single leaf stem, guys. Yeah, and it's important that we keep up with that, because you can come here one day and there'll be nothing, and then the next day there'll be hundreds of them. So you really need to keep on with that. This is a variety called Golden Crown, and that's that. So we've looked at what we need to do now to increase the root mass in this plant. We've looked at what we need to do in order to produce trusses and how many trusses we're going to keep, and we've looked about possible disease of this plant. There's a couple of other diseases. First one, blossom end rot. Now, blossom end rot is a disease that creates the bottom of the tomatoes to turn brown, and it ruins all the fruit on the plant. It's typically associated with a lack of magnesium and manganese, so make sure that you're giving your tomatoes a dose of Epsom salts every now and then, and rather than just putting Epsom salts on the soil, you're much better off diluting that in some hot water and then adding that to a watering can, and that way it's a soluble form and the plants can take it up a lot more readily. So we've done that. As far as the other diseases go, they're pretty much good plants for that, you know. You do get a bit of green fly on them and black fly sometimes, but that's pretty rare. Feeding. Well, at the moment, guys, this plant needs a lot of nitrogen because it's producing leaf growth, okay? As it starts to produce fruit, we will switch over then to a high potash feed. Namely, we will be using comfrey. Now, I have a very old video I'll put up here for you guys about comfrey, but I'm going to be producing a brand new one because we have comfrey all over the place here at the moment, and I need to make some feed for that. But there are two methods I use to make comfrey. There's a quick method and a much slower method, but the storage capacity is much better for the slower method, and we'll talk about that in another video. So guys, the next thing that we need to do as this plant starts to grow is to support it to the cane, and we have a little gun that we use for that, and it puts a little tag around the plant and to the cane, and that's pretty much it. We now need to put some water in here, which I'm going to do in a moment, and this plant will be absolutely sorted. Now I need to get on with planting the rest of these out. Keep your eyes open for the next video, which will probably be the cucumbers also being planted into the Oakland Gardens tomato halos. If you haven't already, guys, get across their website and have a look. All other products that I use on the site that are not from Oakland come from my online store, which you'll also find a link in the description below. So that really leaves me to say, guys, if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. Don't forget to like this video, share it with all your friends, and I'll be seeing you in the next video.